To get things started off, I just wanted to once again say thank you to everyone for joining us. I want to begin by acknowledging that the Child Nature Alliance of Canada, we are headquartered on the unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe in what is commonly known as Ottawa, Ontario now. Our organization is led by white settlers, and we have imposed a settler colonial way of being with the land because our programs were not co-created with Indigenous people. We are very committed to repairing our relationship with Indigenous communities by dismantling harmful practices, changing the way we operate, and co-creating our new programs. So the land is at the heart of everything we do at CNAC, our Child Nature Alliance. So I would personally like to just give thanks to the land for teaching and nurturing my family and giving us a place to live, work, laugh, and play. So myself, my name is Marc St. Dennis. I am Métis in French. I'm a father, I'm a husband, and my role at the Child Nature Alliance is as a project lead. So I am basically looking at leading our community consultation so that we can, co-create a quality indicators for forest and nature schools so that we can come together and say, what is a forest and nature school in Canada? What does it look like in order to say that this is of a high quality and this is what a forest nature school in Canada looks like within our context. So I'm very, very happy to be here and very, very excited to hear from everybody. But for the time being, I'll just pass it off to Petra, who is also going to introduce herself and talk a bit about the project.
Sure. So my name is Petra Eperjesi, and I'm the manager of Forest School Canada at the Child and Nature Alliance of Canada. If you're curious about what the difference between CNAC and Forest School Canada is, please check out our website. Our introductory video that introduces this project does a pretty good job of explaining in a nutshell the relationship between Forest School Canada and CNAC. I also come to this work as a mother. I'm a settler Canadian, and I'm personally grateful to the land as well for offering me lessons even before I knew to thank the land. Oh, you have perfect timing, my honey. Okay, good night.
My eyes, they're still open.
Yep. Okay, so a little bit about tonight and about the project that this is a part of. Good night, honey. So today's event is part of a 3-year community consultation project that we're undertaking with support from the Lawson Foundation. So our goal is to meet with forest and nature school practitioners so that we can do 3 things. 1, articulate as a community what quality forest and nature school in Canada looks like, sounds like, and feels like, as Marc spoke to. Improve our professional learning programs that we offer, and set the stage for representing the forest and nature school sector in discussions around policy and systems change. So why this project and why now? There is unprecedented interest in and attention on forest and nature schools in Canada at this time. That's been building for several years, and COVID has just, really thrust us into the limelight. But at any rate, we're in an important moment, and we have heard from you, the practitioners on the ground, that we need a set of quality indicators in forest and nature school in Canada. We've also heard you looking to CNAC for a higher level of leadership, and we have heard you looking to CNAC for a national voice to represent the sector. So our hope is that this project, this community consultation project, will position us to do just that. And instead of just assuming what the sector needs and designing our strategy and our response based that way, we're hoping that you'll walk with us every step of the way through this project so that all the outcomes are truly representative of your needs and aspirations as practitioners. back to you, Marc.
Thanks, Petra. So the Fireside Chats, this is a series of conversations that we are excited to have with you all. And I guess the purpose of them is to create a virtual space for forest nature school practitioners to meet, share experiences, and answer questions related to a specific theme. So during this specific fireside chat, we're going to dive into 4 principles of forest and nature school practice. These were developed in 2018, admittedly developed in-house, so they're not perfect. We're well aware of that. We're very much open to hearing feedback on developing those. So especially because, like I said earlier, our organization comes from that settler background. And so we are aware of what we've imposed, and we are wanting to hear from folks of ways that we can do better. But the one that we're looking at today is, we'll go over the principles a little bit later, but the theme that we're talking about today is relationship with land. And so we want to learn from all of you what the principles of practice look like on the ground, and specifically how we can measure them and say with a certain degree of certainty that the principles are being met. So like, what are the measurements? What is missing? So we are hoping tonight to have a lively discussion about quality practice in forest and nature school. And I just want to say that the Child Nature Alliance of Canada, we are definitely not here to judge anyone's practice or be critical. And I hope we can also see that everyone's probably very passionate about this topic. And so there's likely going to be some differences between us and what we value as essential. So, which is, basically why we're actually here. We're having this conversation so that we can find what is common amongst us and what is shared, and while still preserving what makes our specific practices unique. So let's just remember to be respectful and kind to one another if and when disagreements arise. So the format for tonight is going to be, we have 3 guest speakers with us, and they are practitioners themselves with some great experience that we're very excited to speak with them. So that will be the first half of tonight's event, followed by a facilitated breakout room discussion. So we are going to break up this amazingly large group of people into I think we have 10 breakout groups, so we'll do those. There'll be a specific question that will be asked in the breakout rooms. Each breakout room will have a breakout room lead who has already been assigned, and they will just do the recording of the conversation. And then we'll come back together near the end as a group. We'll hear from some of those leads, and then we'll close out for the evening. Back to you, Petra.
Yeah, so the chat box is there for you. We hope that you will also answer the questions and do that in the chat box and discuss with each other the questions that we're using to guide the discussion this evening. And as you have already noticed, we will be launching a few polls during the event. If you have questions or thoughts after the event, you are welcome to share them with us in whatever way is best for you, whether that's a quick video recording or an audio recording, or if you want to write them via email, whatever works best for you, and send them to us at community@childnature.ca. So Heather, I'm sure we'll pop that into the chat. You can also complete the survey for this session, which I think I already saw just pop up. Which is in the chat, and it's also going to be available on our website. So if you haven't noticed already, on childnature.ca, there is a new page devoted to this project. And after each session, and actually in the lead up to each of these fireside chats, the survey format, like the survey version of these questions, will be available to you to fill out. But if that format doesn't work for you, please use the others that I mentioned as well. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our guest speakers this evening. So first up is Lukeisha Andrews. Welcome, Lukeisha. Lukeisha grew up in a small village of Diamonds on the beautiful island of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Located on the windward side of the island, Diamonds is neighboring lush forest, the ocean, an active volcano, and waterfalls. As a child, Lukeisha spent most of her time playing outdoors, getting her knees bruised, making memories in nearby banana and coconut fields and streams. She enjoys working with children, watching them play and explore in nature as they learn independently. Her best days are time spent with her son in nearby forests where they hike, play, and explore. Lukeisha is passionate about sharing her love of nature and exploration with students of all ages. As Thomas Berry noted, teaching children about the natural world should be treated as one of the most important events in their lives. Lukeisha holds a bachelor's degree in Library and Information Studies from the University of the West Indies, Mona, Jamaica. Lukeisha worked as a librarian at St. Vincent and Grenadines Community College, and she is currently a director of education at Wild Roots Nature and Forest School in Cumberland, Ontario. And we have Lise. Welcome, Lise. Lise began her career at camps in Manitoba as an outdoor educator and guide. Lise completed a Bachelor of Recreation in 2001, a Master's of Social Work in 2007 at the University of Manitoba, a certificate in Expressive Arts Therapy in 2012, and the Forest School Practitioner Training in 2015. Lise combines these areas of practice to provide clinical direction, facilitate groups, and counsel individuals both in urban and wilderness environments with a focus on physical and emotional safety, successful participation, fun, meaningful activity, and group cohesion. Lise is on the Forest School Canada facilitator team with us at CNAC, and she sits on the board of the Association for Experiential Education. Welcome, Lise. And Adrian Alphonso. So Adrian is the director of Clear Paths. Adrian is a band and community member of Wewe Sikapo. Did I say that right? I didn't practice that in advance. First Nation. Adrian is passionate about Indigenous perspective cycling programs and leads on Treaty 1 territory land to honor truth and reconciliation. At Momenta, which is the organization that Lise leads, Adrian delivers inclusive, accessible cycling programs with the goal of inspiring a connection to the land. He has devoted his life to a journey of discovering. He is a commuter, a coach, a professional stunt rider, trials, a bicycle technician, a passionate guide, and devoted his life to a journey of discovering. One thing I wanted to add, which is not in Adrian's official bio there, is that Adrian and Lise worked together and are largely responsible for the way the practitioner's course is currently oriented around relationships, and actually those themes of relationship that you'll see anchoring these fireside chats are Lise and Adrian's, I want to say brainchild, but I think heart child as well. And so there's no one, Adrian immediately came to mind when we landed on relationship with land as the first theme for these fireside chats. So welcome to all of our panelists. Thanks so much for being here, and let's jump right in. So the first set of questions will be about principle 1. So we've outlined 10 principles, and we will be posting those on the website soon. They're not totally all quite ready for public eyes yet. We're still tweaking them a little bit, but there are so there are 4 of those 10 principles that relate to our relationship with land. So we'll be exploring those 4 principles this evening. So first up is principle number 1. Forest Nature School can take place in any outdoor space, including urban green space, playgrounds, forest, creeks, prairies, mountains, shoreline, and tundra. So I think I saw the poll pop up in the chat. So please let us know if you agree or disagree. And Lukeisha, do you agree? Can Forest and Nature School take place in any outdoor space?
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Petra. Yes, I believe that forest and nature school can take place in any of those space. Like at Wild Roots, we actually have two spaces where we hold forest school. We have our shoreline at Petra Island, and we have our forest at Max Kemin. If forest school cannot be held at any outdoor space, the principal access to all this will not this cannot facilitate that, because forest school should be able to take place at any outdoor space in order to access all. If we can't come to, if you can't come to the forest, we will bring the forest to you. People who can't afford to come to our location, we go to them. So I believe strongly that forest school should be able to hold in any outdoor space.
Thanks, Lukeisha. So I hear you really approaching that principle also from an access and equity lens, where, yeah, the principle that forest and nature school can take place everywhere is an accessibility connection as well. Thank you. So then, Lise, I'll follow up with you. Does the outdoor space need to have certain elements or qualities? Maybe I'll start briefly, like with you. Do you agree that it can take place everywhere? And what sorts of qualities or elements does a space need to have from your perspective?
Hi, everyone. There's a lot of people here. Just got to take a deep breath and settle in. Lots of people that I know and look up to. It's awesome to be here. This is a hard question. On the poll, I said no. And the only reason why I said no is because for me, forest school is about a relationship with land. And that relationship with land is about things around us that change and things around us that spark our curiosity and our wonder. So if I'm on a concrete pad, it's hard for me to be sparked with interest. However, I agree with Lukeisha. We can bring those natural elements to all spaces. We can plant gardens so that the bugs can arrive. We can look up at the sky and enjoy the clouds. So I agree that with Lukeisha that we can be everywhere, and this needs to be an accessible thing for everybody to participate in, absolutely. But we do need to make sure that there's something that is catching our curiosity and our interest, and that comes from the land, that comes from the natural world.
Thanks, Lise. Yeah, I think I have my mind is going 1,000 miles a minute as well. But I'll hold my tongue. And actually, Adrian, this isn't in the script, but can I turn to you for your thoughts on this as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Hello, everybody. Anim, Puzu. It's such a pleasure to be here. I just want to chime in on this principle. So in an urban setting, it changes throughout the seasons, especially here in Canada. We get winter, spring, summer, and fall, and each season is going to provide something different each time. So I do agree with Lise and everybody where we can bring in nature objects. I have brought willow sticks into a space just to provide some play. I've brought all sorts of pine cones and medallion type of making nature art. So it's important for sure. Thanks.
Thanks, Adrian. Okay, well, we'll pause on principle 1 for the moment, but I think it'll it'll come back up as we go. And I'll turn it to you, Marc, then for some discussion of principle 2.
Thanks, Petra. Yeah, and everyone, just as a reminder to absolutely, we are very much encouraging your participation in the chat, but we also have our survey if you'd prefer to just listen and then answer the survey later on. We'll post the link again near the end of our conversation tonight, but it will be available on our website too. So the second principle that we're talking about today is Forest and Nature School is a sustained process of regular and repeated sessions in the same outdoor space, supporting children to develop a reciprocal relationship with the land and an understanding of themselves as part of the natural world. So I guess like for myself, the 3 main words in this principle that I kind of want us to nitpick over is regular, repeated, and the same. And what do those mean? Are they necessary? So Adrian, I'm going to ask you the first question with this one is, again, just do you agree? Does Forest and Nature School need to be regular, repeated, and in the same space?
The work and the experience that I have personally seen, it has been revolving around regular and repeated visits. I had just briefly touched on the seasons, or each visit may be differently. And it's important to listen to the land with each visit because it's going to teach you something every single time. You may notice something very different from last time, or you may have a connection with a piece of that outdoors that you just don't know what it's about, but you're aware that it's familiar. Indigenous languages revolve around being on the land because we're from the land. And if we are learning our language, which is our land speaking to us, at the same time of learning what it feels like and what it smells like and what it looks like, it's a very immersive experience. And when we share that with some of our participants and others of our community, this is a very powerful thing. So as we continue to visit the same spot and learn things differently from each experience, we can then bring more awareness to and also add that in this, again, winter, that spot once a week or once a month, it's very impactful for everybody. I think I could just leave that there. That's a lot to take in, so.
Yeah, thank you, Adrian. Yeah, I definitely hear what you're saying. I think there was a little bit of a connection issue for myself. I'm not sure if everyone else had the same experience, but at least personally, I got most of what you said. So, but I think you're right in many ways personally too, is that being in the same space helps with actually developing that relationship. And I know just as like my son, when we go to the same space, he starts to notice new things each time. Lukeisha, can I ask you the same question? First of all, is like, do you agree that Forest and Nature School needs to be regular, repeated, and in the same space? But furthermore, what does regular, repeated, and the same space mean in your practice?
Regular means, for us at Wild Roots, it means once a week or twice a week for a minimum of 3 hours on that set day for all 4 seasons. Why all 4 seasons? Because as Adrian said, the environment changes. Kids need to see how the land changes in order to respect the land, in order to grow with the land. For a high quality forest school and forest and nature school, children need to build relationship with peers and teachers and the land. Repeated sessions in one season will allow relationship to grow, to reconnect children to nature and the land. This is where children can see the environment change each week due to weather and seasons and watch things grow. They learn about the seasons firsthand and get to know the land. For example, they learn how to identify a maple tree during the spring, during the fall, and during the winter by observing the tree, smelling the tree. They learn what comes from the tree. And this, they grow more respect for the land because they see what the land has to offer. Thank you.
Thanks, Lukeisha. Yeah, I like the interesting theme of seasons that are being woven through this conversation, because I think we've been, at least at Child and Nature Alliance, been thinking about that a lot lately, and there's a lot to learn from the seasons. Lise, the next question is for you, and I'm wondering, in your experience, how do we know that children are developing a sense of themselves as belonging to the natural world?
That's such a good question, hey? So I was thinking about this question this afternoon a little bit. And I think one of the components of success at forest school is this idea of feeling safe. And so the land can really offer us a beautiful place to feel safe. And it's really up to us forest school practitioners to develop that sense of safety and that sense of place so that they can settle into the land. I can recall many instances of young children just not knowing what to do and not knowing where to go or even what to ask. But there's this moment, and Adrian and I have talked about this moment of like, all of a sudden it's like, whoosh, settled, and everyone's engaged and everyone's happy. And I do really truly believe that it's because we've arrived at a place where they can feel safe. And you know, the seasons play into that, because in the winter time we don't feel as safe as we do when it's beautiful outside and it's easy to keep our bodies warm. So I think that for me, it's that settling of them just really being attuned to the land and what's around them.
Thank you, Lise. You've definitely given me something to think about.
I had deep nods to that moment of settling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's such a phenomenon. Like I wonder if other people, I'm curious to see if anybody responds in the chat to having that same experience. But yeah, often working with school groups, and teachers will feel everybody's kind of at high alert. And I would always just say, just wait, just give it 15 minutes. It's like clockwork. And that feeling comes as you described. Thanks, Lise. Okay, so moving on to Principle 9, and Principle 9 and 10 are going to be woven through each of our discussions. So you'll get to know them well, and we'll probably rework them and hone them as we go. So Principle 9 is Forest and Nature School prioritizes building reciprocal relationships with First Nations, Métis, and Inuit, who have been learning from this land since time immemorial. So first to you, Adrian, as forest and nature school practitioners in Canada, how do you and how do we respond to the fact that we work on and with Indigenous land? What are our responsibilities and what actions do you take?
Great. I may just pause for a moment because it just said that my connection is unstable. So I just want to make sure I'm coming through clear. How is it right now? Great. So as a foresthood practitioner, I do my best to bring my language and my culture to the experiences that when we're out, that is my duty as an Anishinaabe or Ojibwe. I am finding my language and my culture because that's something that I feel like is part of my journey as I'm bringing people along. My duty is to help organizations and agencies who are interested in learning more enter a process of understanding through reading the Truth and Reconciliation Calls to Action. There's a few specific ones that I highly recommend, which is Article 14 and 43 and 44. And those last two include UNDRIP. So UNDRIP is the UN Declaration of Indigenous Peoples. As Indigenous communities have gathered throughout the times and identified needs of what we need from society, it is clearly imprinted there. And if we're going to move forward as if these things are already implemented, those are the steps that are important, is to organizationally look at these things and adopt them as if they're law or taken into legislation already. As far as waiting, we can choose to wait, but it's just going to continue to be not addressed. So as organizations, as communities, as your own personal information to learn, the Truth and Reconciliation Calls to Action are a must read, as well as getting through the articles of UN Declaration of Indigenous Peoples. And that's the reason why there is some change happening in these organizations, is because some have considered that. Working with Indigenous peoples doesn't just mean First Nations communities, as in reservations. It means your neighbors, your children's friends who are Indigenous, their families, the people you work with every day. It's important to be acknowledged, and that's the start. Ooh, I'm just looking at the question here. It's a multi-layered one. So yeah, my responsibilities is to find out on my own how I can contribute to these experiences with reconnection with land. And to me, language, Indigenous languages are of the land and created for land and learning, with the biggest value being observation, followed up by inquiry. So that's what I wanted to say about that. Miigwech.
Miigwech, Adrian. Not much for me to say after that. There's lots for me to chew on. So I'll move over to Lukeisha, the same questions. As a forest and nature school practitioner, how do you respond to the fact that you work on and with Indigenous land? What are your responsibilities and what actions do you take?
I always tell my students, if you know your history, then you will know where you're coming from. And I believe strongly that educating the kids about the land, telling them how we get to using the land, is a major part of changing how they think in the future. Some actions we take at Forest School to help with this education. We read a lot of stories, and poems. We educate ourselves as practitioners. We attend powwows. We attend singing circles with Aboriginal people. We go to birchbark crafting, and we bring this back to Forest School. We teach them how to do beadings, crafting, and we invite the elders to come to Forest School to teach the children, to do storytellings with them, because it is very important to incorporate the Aboriginals in Forest School to help teaching the children these things.
Thanks, Lukeisha. And to you too, Lise, same questions. Should I say them again, or do you feel?
You can say them again.
Okay.
Yeah.
As a forest and nature school practitioner in Canada, how do you respond to the fact that you work on and with Indigenous land? What are your responsibilities and what actions do you take?
Yeah, this is a huge question. And we could probably talk about this for a long time, but I'll give a few tidbits of some of the things that I'm trying to do to repair past harm. I work on stolen land. It's important for me to acknowledge that every single day. I have a beautiful relationship with Adrian, which has helped me move forward in truth and reconciliation, and for me to understand how important for me as a business owner, as a forest school practitioner, to think about my values and policies and procedures, and making sure that we're being equitable in what we're doing. Adrian listed some of the calls to action that he's focused on. I'm also focused on particular calls to action, which are 7, 12, 63, 89, and 92. And I would encourage everyone to do that work, to read the document and to figure out where they can be active in serious truth and reconciliation, because it does take work and action to do that work. So thanks.
Thanks, Lise. Yeah, as Lise said, it's a huge topic, and sort of as Marc said from the get-go, not one that we mean to lead from a place of or open from a place of like, oh, we're doing it right, and we're experts on this topic, because we're not. I think these are great concrete examples of starting places that we can move forward from. And yeah, some really beautiful things coming out in the chat too. Michelle wrote, you embrace the 7 grandfather teachings and walk the walk, remembering the past to allow the next generation to build a wonderful future of unity and the medicine wheel that encompasses us all. Thanks, Michelle. Sorry, I haven't been turning my attention to the chat that much, because I'm just not that good at multitasking, to be honest. Okay, I think, Marc, you're next with Principle 10.
Yeah, thanks, Petra. And yeah, I keep like turning my head to look at my other screen too, so that's why sometimes it looks like I'm talking off to like some random person that's nowhere in front of me. So I feel that, Petra, the too much going on sometimes. So the next principle of practice that we're discussing, and again, this is one that we are going to be interweaving throughout all of our conversations, because it's very important, is a question about access and equity. And so the principle goes like this. It says, forest nature school is grounded in and prioritizes building engaged, healthy, vibrant, and diverse communities by always considering issues of access and equity. So Lukeisha, to start things off with this particular
I
principle.
lost my audio, yeah.
I
Lost
asked,
my audio.
I think there's some mics that are on. If you can just make sure all those mics are muted. So the question is for Lukeisha is acknowledging that access and equity is a problem within the forest nature school sector. What steps would you like to see the sector as a whole take to ensure that all children can get to program locations?
At Forest School, we believe that children should have equal opportunity, whether irrespective of ethnicity, attainment, disability, gender, sexual orientation. Currently at Wild Roots, we have one Aboriginal child and one Black child. Why is this? Is it because that we're not reaching out to that population more? How can we change that? All of the kids at Forest School, the time we hold Forest School is from 9 to 12. So the parents drop their kids off at 9 o'clock and they pick them up at 12 o'clock. So you see what sort of children will be coming to Forest School. Parents who can afford to take time off from their jobs to come to Forest School. So this is one problem we have, the timing of Forest School. We try to change this by reaching out to the community to offer free Forest School for people who can't afford to come to Forest School. And it started havoc within the community because they didn't want the kids to be in the forest. They say the kids will wreck the forest. So that went out of the window. To provide this equal society for all participants, we need to do much more in our sector. We need to reach out to the less fortunate populations and see how we can reach them.
Thank you, Lukeisha. Yeah, it makes me think about the privilege of being able to, like you say, get to the program to begin with, and just given the timing that's often associated with the programs. So it's definitely a challenge in the sector, and I think I'm glad we're having the conversation about it so that we can learn how to move forward in a better way. Maybe Lise and Adrian, I can ask the same question of both of you, if in case you have something to share about that. Lise, can I start with you and ask what steps you'd like to see the sector as a whole take to ensure that children have equitable access to forest and nature school?
Yeah, I think, I like to think about the structures that exist in the world already. So we have schools and we have childcare centers. And for me, it's really important to think about how we can use school fields differently, how we can train teachers to see that the natural world has a lot of value with our curriculums. the other day I was like, why doesn't Forest School Canada teach at universities? I just was, you know, these ideas come to my head. It's like, how do we support people to, you know, embrace this style of teaching and learning? And how do we get every single kid outside during the day for more than just recess? And so I think a lot about who's creating the policies and procedures, and are they willing to talk to me about how we can do things differently? So yeah, I mean, seeing all the people here today, there's 89 people here advocating for kids to be outside. So, you know, the future is bright.
Thanks, Lise. Adrian, same question to you. I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about what steps we can take as a sector to ensure that there's equitable access to program locations.
Great. I've given some thought to this because a lot of my passion is to and aim to remove barriers for everyone. It's a big thing to take on, to think about all the time, but it's something that really passionate about. I think that we are catering to a lot of outdoor enthusiasts who are looking for alternative programming for their kids. It's true. We're offering outdoor ed for families for the kids to enjoy while we're with them, and it looks like childcare. What we're actually providing is opportunities to connect with the earth, with the land, and that needs to be supported by climate activism and climate action. It doesn't fit in education, it's clear, because we're not being supported by education. It's not really health, because we're not being supported entirely by health either. So by bringing people to nature, they are creating their own connections personally, deep within themselves, within their identity and their language. And it is so true that they're going to become advocates themselves one day, whether on a small scale or it could be a huge scale. So I think we need to start speaking to our lobbyists, our people who are working diligent on saving spaces, parks, and trails. And we need to get the support from action, because this is going to be a multi-generational of internet is unstable. But if I didn't spend time outside, there's no way I'd be in a position right now where I can even speak of any of this. Barriers to apply for, as well as creating political moves at the climate action level. I think I'm very passionate about it, so that's that. Thank you.
Thanks, Adrian. Yeah, it's interesting just hearing from all three of you too, how it makes me think about, you know, it's about our sector, but it's also about how our sector relates with the rest of the world. Like we have, everything is interrelated. And so it's about systems change as well as like personal change, as well as like changes within the sector itself. So it's we sort of have this responsibility then to reach out, not just turn inward. Like that's important too, to look at ourselves and see what we can do, but also to see how we can support these other movements. So thank you for bringing those conversations forward, the three of you. Really appreciate having you here today to share your experiences. I'm sure this won't be the last time we speak with each other. Just in the interest of giving everyone else here a chance to have a conversation and to share their experiences, we are going to now move into the breakout room sessions. So let me just explain this a little bit for everyone so you get a better sense of what to expect. we're going to ask one question during the breakout room. And the question is, how do we know children are developing a reciprocal relationship with the land? What are the indicators of this? And perhaps is it a spectrum? So just like I said earlier, each breakout room already has an assigned facilitator who will help guide the conversation a bit and who will record the conversations with their own notes. And then after the breakout room, we're going to invite everyone back together as one large group. And we will ask some of the facilitators to share a summary of your conversations. We won't be able to get to everyone, I don't think, just given the size of the group that we have today and the number of breakout rooms we have. However, we're going to ask all of the breakout room leads to share with us the notes from your conversations, and these notes will then support the project, which is in this case looking to build the quality indicators for forest and nature schools. So all of your voices will be incorporated and heard. But for the sake of when we come back to as a group, we'll just hear from a few of them. And so the breakout rooms will last for about 15 minutes. You should get a notification saying, hey, you have a countdown. Once again, reminding everyone that the breakout rooms will not be recorded. When we come back together as a main group, the recording will resume again. So Charlene, who is our tech guru in the background, she will send us off. All right, welcome back everyone. So just a reminder, you should have been automatically muted, but if for some reason that did not work, just it'd be very helpful just to hit that mute button again so it's not confusing chaos as we come back together as a group. Not sure about the others, but we had a really, really nice conversation. I have to say, Brianna, I would love to hear the end of that story about the moss. We got cut off before we could. So if you ever want to finish that story through email, I would love to hear that. So I guess now I'm going to invite a few shorts summary of the conversations from some folks. So I guess I'll start with Cameron, who is a member of our evaluation team actually for this project. What was your breakout room like? What was the discussion like?
It was great, man. We like us. We also got cut off too. There was just some really rich insights that were coming on, despite the fact that we did get a good minute to close it out. We came up with some very interesting, just a very interesting discussion in terms of what people's some of the observations and some of the things. So just to summarize, I guess fairly quickly to give people enough chance to chat. Is one of the things that one of the indicators that that people felt that was shared across a few different stories was the idea is that when children are prompting things. So when you might have had a lesson, and then the next week the children are wanting to, or there's a part of the lesson that's not taught, maybe forgotten or missed or something, and the children want to do that. Or there's something that you did one week and then the next week they want to do it again. So when they're starting to lead, provide a little bit of leadership or prompting, unprompted, they're wanting to do stuff. So that was one of the big things that came out. I'm going to sort of jump around a couple of things. One of the really, I think, big insights that came right at the end of our conversation was this idea of a triangle. So rather than just thinking about it as whether children and the land, we started to talk a little bit about the role of the practitioner, and we talked about the land and the children, and actually viewing it as a triangle. So there's this idea of the child, the practitioner, and the land, and there's these relationships between land and practitioner, land and child, child and practitioner. But then as we started to talk, another triangle came out, was time, place, and person. So being able to understand those things, and that it's in those relationships there that there was a lot of discussion as to understanding that reciprocal nature is understanding how children fit and act within those kinds of relationships. That was something that came up. That's not as clear of an indicator, but very useful somewhat of a taxonomy. Yeah, I think those are some of the biggest ones. The other one other piece that sort of came in there tied together was this idea about having intergenerational conversation. Is once children start extending their experience with the land, with the forest school, to parents, peers, outside. One of the stories that was told is that what happens is when kids are bringing their families back to the place where class was after, like not outside of class time, when that's something that's another really important indicator that we discussed as well.
Thanks, Cameron. It's interesting just for myself because a lot of those themes also seem to come up in the conversation I was involved in. Caitlin, I'm interested to hear what your group is talking about.
Yeah, we also had some really lovely conversations. I kind of wish I was in every single group. It would be so fascinating. So some of the things that we were really talking about was just the different relationships and how children kind of demonstrate that they're building relationships. So some of the things that came up were around when they had kind of empathetic responses to things that they saw in the forest. So, you know, someone carving into a tree or litter that they found in a stream that they often visit, and how that would kind of generate these inquiry practices of, well, why is this happening? And is this going to hurt the fish? And what are we going to do? And how can we help? But also that it was something that they took personally in a way as well. So kind of demonstrating that emotion that's connected. Also, yeah, just some of them, again, similar to what Cameron was sharing, but sharing those stories with their parents, with their friends, kind of talking about all the exciting things that they discovered and learned and experienced, and how, you know, they wanted to go back every single day and were disappointed when they couldn't. Kind of demonstrates just the emotion or the impact that it has with some of those children. And then other people were talking about how, kind of to measure that, we're seeing children going to the same place and how over time they're becoming more and more comfortable. So the first visit, maybe they stayed on the trail, didn't go off, really were quite kind of reserved in their exploration. And then the more often they would go, the kind of further from the trail they would start to visit. One person shared in our group about how they did a night walk as well, and this boy that is usually quite scared of the dark in his home was like leading the way and felt so powerful in that forest space that previously he probably would have been stuck to the trail and was typically scared of the dark, but he was very comfortable in the forest. So kind of just seeing those emotional responses, their like excitement for it, and their increasing comfort with it in those spaces. And then similar to what another point that Cameron had kind of noted was also them planning their play for the next session. So being so excited and knowing, you know, going in there with a mission the next time they were there and knowing exactly what they were doing. And one cool one was some of the children naming parts of the forest. So there's one program that there is Pelican Clearing was one location that they would visit, and it was named that because at one point they saw a decomposing pelican, and so this was really exciting and interesting, and lots of questions, and so then that became their special spot, and they named it, which is a really cool way to indicate kind of relationship and familiarity. So lots of cool things that came out.
Thanks, Caitlin. Once again, it seems like there's a common thread for many of these conversations, and we spoke about that as well in our group about naming as well as the play. And I think the interesting thing that was brought up in our group about play was that the kids who will start to remember their play, but beyond that, they'll also start inviting other kids like the next week to come that weren't there the first week to come and join in on that play in that particular spot. And then also with like, bringing the stories back to their parents, it's also, that was brought up, the idea of the kids actually telling their parents how to behave with the land. Like, hey, you can't do that. That's not allowed. That hurts the forest. So that just reminded me of that. Jason, I'm wondering what your group was up to.
Thank you. Frankly, very beautiful stories. I really enjoyed the quick conversation we had. A lot of similar things to Caitlin and Cameron. One thing that really struck me was this idea that often when we think about what indicators of child development, you often ask, what do they know? And our group was saying, what's more like, what do they ask? And this sort of approach to inquiry that is important in sort of outdoor spaces, stories of kids first seeing this wide open space or this space outdoors, and then getting very specific about it. Again, the naming of things came up. Like, we wanted to know what these things were and why they were. Observing older children who've been in this program or school or group for however long, teaching the younger kids about do's and don'ts and what you do and what you don't do. And that similar to what was said before about being careful about what you do with and to the land in relation to other things on the land, like other animals, and what the bees need and what the birds need, and so on. And just asking what do we know about, for instance, chickadees was a animal that came up, but what the chickadees can teach us, that kind of idea. I think that finally, just to wrap up, a lot of, again, same ideas as the other groups, but this idea that if you get this foundation of repeated visits to the same place or engagement with the same place allows you to interact in other places differently. So it's not that you don't go to the other places. You go to one place over and over, but you also visit other places, and then you have a different relationship or different set of questions or opportunities at these other places. And I think that's when you start to think about the transferability of this kind of knowledge, and start thinking about the outdoor environment differently. I hope I captured that, folks, that were in my group.
Thanks, Jason. Yeah, that reminds me just oh no, I lost my train of thought. I had a point. Anyways, I do wanted to say to everyone as well that we are getting near the end of our time, so unfortunately we can't hear from the leads from every single breakout room, but like I said earlier, we will be collecting the notes from all of the leads so that we can still, your voice will be part of the process for looking at this particular question. So thank you to everyone for participating in those breakout rooms, and just for coming, for the listening to our guest speakers and answering in the chats. I'd like to just take a brief moment to remind folks that if you didn't comment in the chats and didn't feel like it, for whatever reason, if you'd still like to get in touch and share your experiences, there's a couple ways you can do that. We have an online survey, which Heather has already put in the chat. So thank you, Heather. And so they're the same questions that we asked today during this event. So if you'd like to really dive into it and answer the questions that way, that's another way we can collect your feedback and incorporate your voice. Like Petra said at the beginning of this event, you guys are the heart of what we do and why we operate. So we don't want to be imposing the answers to what Forest and Nature School is. We really want this to be a co-created effort. And so really, really appreciate everyone participating today. So there will also be a recording of this chat, which we will put online, and we do have a website as well that we launched on Tuesday. Now, the next Fireside Chat is scheduled for February 25th at 3:00 p.m. Eastern Time. We'd be really excited if we could see some of you or all of you back for that. And that one is going to be on the theme of relationship with play. If you want to get in touch in the meantime, we have a new email address specifically for this project at simply community@childnature.ca. So once again, thank you everyone for joining us this evening. Really appreciate you taking the time. And I hope you all have good days, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. This was great.